After suffering through the darkness of Act 2 and the darkness of our choices determined by the Wheel of Fate, Tavni and co are ready to conclude this story and venture out into Act 3. If you haven't seen the previous parts of this challenge, they're linked in the description, but as a quick recap, the name of the game is that we roll a number wheel to determine all of our dialogue choices. So far, it's been going great. Without further ado, we arrive in Rivington, where we immediately run into a kid called Yenna, who tells us she's looking for her mom. We tell her her mom is probably dead, because why not? Act 3 is off to a great start clearly. We then circle behind a donation center, where we find this guard. We decide to speak to him, and he complains to us about refugees and the state of Baldur's Gate. We tell him we should just kill everyone, and he gets really into this suggestion. So much so that he starts snapping around and is revealed to be the one, the only bloodthirsty and shape-shifting Orin. Tavni isn't too shook by this though, and we continue on. We run into a guy called Arthur outside of his house, where he has just found out that a family of refugees is living in there. We tell him we can take care of them for free, and he is distrustful at first, but tells us to go for it if we think we can. This makes his, associate, Zenobia, suspicious of us, and she tries to extort some money out of us. We tell her she's free to deal with the refugees herself, and she isn't happy with that. We end up having to fight her and the companions, and the fight goes by swimmingly. We then tell Arthur that our fee has now gone up, and we want payment now for getting rid of the refugees who are living in his house. He says fine, and we walk up to the refugee and offer him a bit of money so they can find somewhere else to stay. This is one of the nicest things Tavni has done this entire playthrough actually. We then return to Arthur and collect our payment from him and get on our merry way. Down the road we run into a circus but choose to leave instead of even trying to get in, so no circus for us this playthrough. We then pick up the Father Lorgan quest and skedaddle into the caves beneath the monastery, where we kill a few doppelgangers and find the murder weapon with which Father Lorgan was killed. We head back up and tell Sister Yanis about our discovery, and she tells us to go find Valeria to go tell them about what we found. I then realize that I should change Tavni's eyes to reflect that she has become partially Illithid, and I think this looks sick as hell. It is then time to sneak into the city, but for some reason Kurz does not follow us and tries to walk past the guard, who he chooses to threaten to kill. This then turns into a combat, naturally, and I choose to turn Tavni and co around to go help his dumbass. This fight goes on for what feels like forever, but we destroy the guard and are then free to carry on further into the city. We go into Sharess's Caress, and before finding Valeria, we speak to the Drow twins who propose a night of debauchery together to Tavni. She says she's interested in the Lady Drow, but as soon as she names her price, Tavni's like, nah, and leaves. We then find Valeria, and Tavni chooses to tell them she's not found anything of use regarding the murder. So, onwards and upwards it is, and we venture out to find Raphael in one of the spare rooms in the establishment. Raphael then tells us that he plans to free Orpheus, who is trapped in the astral prison, but we tell him we're done listening to him and leave. One consistent thing about Tavni, apart from being a murderous creep, is that she refuses to listen to Raphael. Kinda based if you ask me. We then remember that upon entering Sharess's Caress, Mamselle Amira, the owner of the establishment, told us that one of her employees, Fionn, the stern librarian, had gone missing. We venture out and regrettably find Fionn's body underneath her bed, along with a hit list left behind by whatever cultist killed her. We rush to tell Valeria, but once again Tavni chooses to not tell them anything. It seems for some reason Tavni is incredibly distrustful of this Hollyphant. We then run into single-handedly the hottest NPC in this game, Blaze Elin, on our way through to Worm's Rock. She tells us she can't let us in, and we try to convince her to let us in by saying that we'll donate to a fund for orphans. She obviously knows I don't part with my gold, ever, because she doesn't believe it. Tavni then decides to tell her that the real reason she's here is because someone has a plot to assassinate Duke Ravengard, which works, and voila, we're through. We march on into the castle and get stopped by a steel watcher. Gortash takes over the being of this watcher and invites us to join his inauguration, which is about to take place upstairs. We say, why not, and head on in. A steel watcher immediately informs us that aggressive behavior will not be tolerated here, and I was so incredibly worried that Tavni might roll to attack here. This fight is so brutal it would have been an instant TPK, but surprisingly, she didn't, for once. Gortash then proposes we form an alliance, whereby Tavni kills Orin and then returns her Netherstone to Gortash. We could then rule the world through the Netherstones together. Tavni has an inkling of curiosity towards this deal and tells him she'll think about it, but makes no promises. To no one's surprise, Tavni then rolls to tell Gortash he's a dead man and that we cannot let him take over the city. However, the game once again is forced to warn us that we shouldn't do this. We avoid fighting Gortash and watch his inauguration in peace. On our way out, Mizora tells us that Gortash has imprisoned Will's dad and that he's as good as dead. She says she'll wait for us at camp if we want to speak to her later. Once we land in the lower city, we make our way into the Flaming Fist's office. In there, we find a woman called Laura trying to get someone to help find her daughter, Vanra. The Flaming Fist are acting crazy, so we offer to help her. She tells us to go to the Blushing Mermaid to investigate, and we promise her we'll head there ASAP. However, we don't head there before breaking into the cellar of the Stormshore Tabernacle to steal some holy items. Doing this puts a curse on us called Castigated by Divinity, which means that when we heal, 2 hostile devas appear. We do this outside and pull a bunch of useless Flaming Fists into the fight. Instead of attacking the devas, they keep trying to fight the Steel Watcher that is allied to us for some reason, so yeah, they're useless. Will manages to kill one of the devas with 2 casts of Lightning Bolt and summons a fog cloud as a result. I have the party just go chill in the fog, while Curse joins the last couple of remaining fists in giving the remaining deva a deserved walloping. Tavni deals the killing blow, and we continue on. We head on into the Elf Song Tavern, where we find Devella. She tells us Duke Stelmane is dead and that she is investigating the murder. We tell her about the cultist hit list we found by Fion's body, and Devella tells us about Saravak Anchev, an infamous ballist. She says that ballist activity has increased, and we agree. She asks us to help her investigate the murders, and we respond saying we have better things to do than to investigate some cult. Nonetheless, she asks us to go warn some of the people in the city who appear on the list. We say fine, and continue onward. The next night at camp, Mizora appears and presents Will with a choice. He can either promise his soul to Mizora and Zariel for the rest of eternity and save his father, or he can break his pact with the one caveat that his father would die. I think it's kinda insane that Tavni gets to choose here for Will, and there's no way to give him as a character the full autonomy to choose for himself, but that's another topic for another time. Tavni rolls the dice and convinces him to break the pact and earn his freedom. Then we head on to sleep, but the Emperor once again interrupts our slumber. We tell him his company is disgusting and that we don't care about what he's trying to tell us about his past relationship with Stelmane. He's like, "Okay, bye then," and we continue on with our sleep. The next day we go into the sewers and run into Yenna, of all people. She says Orin kidnapped her and took her down here, and we decide to ask her what exactly makes her think she'd be safer with us. Tavni is showing her kind side once again. However, this dialogue option reveals that Yenna is just Orin shapeshifted. We tell Orin that Yenna is all hers because she is an insufferable little child. Orin then tells us that we must go kill Gortash for her, or else she'll kill Yenna and us. Now, suddenly Tavni decides that she cares for Yenna and tells Orin to please not hurt her. Tavni's moral compass really swings from one extreme to the other in a matter of seconds. We then have enough of hanging out in the stinky sewers and go back to the Elf Song, where we find Lacrissa and Alfira are hanging out on the rooftop. Naturally, we roll the dickhead option and tell Lacrissa to get back to work, or we'll rat her out to her awful manager, who apparently does not believe in giving his employees breaks. Amazing. Add being a bourgeoisie bootlicker onto Tavni's ever-growing list of crimes. We then head on out to our first victim on our cultist hit list, Cora Highberry. We catch Dolor in the act, trying to poison Cora, and foil his plans, leading to combat. Unfortunately, the real Dolor escapes, and we are left to fight his doppelgangers. The doppelgangers manage to paralyze 3 of my party members, with Will being the last one standing. With one very upcasted magic missile, he is able to take all 3 enemies down, and we survive. We then continue on, and suddenly get pulled into combat by Damon. Again, this must be due to him aggroing us when we attacked last sight in, but I feel bad killing him, so instead I decide to just knock him out. Pretty sad, but oh well. We're then accosted by some Flaming Fist again, who tell us that Mizora told them exactly how Will killed his father, jealous of his power. We decide to navigate this situation by convincing them that we intend to save Ravengard's life, and fortunately succeed. They then tell us about the Heart of the Gate, a dragon living beneath the city. They tell us to go find it and ask for its help in fighting for the city. We hear them out and go our separate ways. Right next to us, we come across Aradin, the piece of crap from earlier in the game who tipped us about the Night Song. He tells us Loroaken, the wizard who sent him on this quest for Night Song, is the resident of the tower behind him. We tell him we found the Night Song and that we have no idea where she is by now.
Son of a bastard's hole.
He is obviously very pleased with this information. We then decide to head down to the guild hall. There, I find Mol uninteractable, probably also due to what happened at last slide in, which is kinda sad. But we move on to Faerun, which is the real reason I'm down here. He carries something in his inventory called Terrazul that is pretty cheap to buy, which acts essentially as a way to get haste. I go over, buy what he has, and partial rest to refresh his inventory. However, the first time I do this, the Emperor yanks me out of my sleep and starts starts talking to me shirtless.
Brother, what's that?
He tries to convince us that we're allies, and we tell him he's not fooling us. He offers us to read his thoughts to gain our trust, but we tell him we don't need all that since we know his true nature. He gets mad and reveals to us the actual truth about his and Stelmane's relationship, namely that she was under his thrall the entire time they were associates. This dude then has the tentacles to ask us if we liked what we saw, and calls us a puppet. He also tells us Tavni has no value without him. He continues to threaten and berate us, and we respond to his ugly ass by saying we should have thrown him and the prism into the shadow curse. This makes him mad and he yeets us out of the prism. Good riddance. The next day, all I do is buy more Terrazol, then partial rest again. Only this time, I'm cornered by Mizora, I got my eyes on you, who says she's picked up on the fact that Tavni hasn't gotten to do the Devil's Tango even once this entire playthrough, and promises us that she can provide us this, literally. Tavni feels the hellfire burning in her loins and doesn't turn down Mizora despite being coupled up with Will right now, and this being possibly the worst thing that she could do to him, like, ever. But hey, we all know at this point that Tavni is an awful, awful person. Indeed, as promised, when we go to rest, Mizora comes to us and we go along with the whole thing. The next morning, we tell Mizora that the experience was glorious and get caught by shirtless Will because I sent all of his stuff to camp because I was sure he'd leave the party after this. He tells us that out of all the people we could have bonged, we chose Mizora and implies that we should be ashamed. We tell him we just had a bit of fun and he shouldn't get so worked up about it, and the game fully glitches. Surprisingly though, Will only yells at us and then tells us to be more careful in the future. So all in all, we didn't sleep with him when we had the chance, but then chose to sleep with his literal mortal enemy instead, and he doesn't leave us? Oh man, Will's character arc is so poorly implemented I can't even begin to explain my thoughts on it. This could have been such a compelling moment between Tavni and him, and instead he just pulled the classic, I'm not mad, just disappointed move on us, and we continue on like normal. That is wild. We then briefly meet Nine Fingers Keen, although we choose to immediately leave before really speaking to her, and instead go steal all her valuable stuff from the vault behind her office. Above ground again, we come across a note that informs us that Counselor Floric is to be executed within the next 5 days. We head on out back into Worm's Rock to go free her from prison, where we kill all the guards before speaking to her. She seems defeated and doesn't see a way out of neither the prison nor the situation itself. We successfully roll to tell her we're getting her out of the prison, and she says, okay, show me the way. To this, Tavni decides to respond by rejecting her and refusing to help. So after all this conversation and persuading, we end up leaving Floric behind in the jail awaiting her fate. Bye! We then find some anti-hag support group posters and follow the trail to Old Garlow's place, where we find a group of people. They see right through Tavni's exterior and speak the truest words to describe who she is as a person.
Wicked creature, return to the pit of evil from whence you came.
Tavni tells them we seek no trouble, but they do not believe us, instead staying convinced that we are some kind of hag creature. So obviously, Tavni's immediately over the situation and decides to aggravate them. Combat ensues, and Tavni shoots Jatlo first, revealing that he was really a red cap disguised as a dragonborn. This turns everyone else into my allies, and we continue to clear Jatlo out of the way in one turn. AsTRL then tells us to go check on Mayrina, and we do just that. She tells us that after we saved her from Ethel, she put together a group of survivors who wished to fight against hags. She tells us they managed to track a hag into the city, and that it had snatched up a little girl, but that now their trail had gone cold. We tell her she's on her own this time, lovely, and then continue on. However, what she just told us about the girl sparked our memory of the woman asking for our help to find her daughter. Curious as to whether the girl the hag had snatched up is the same as the woman's daughter, we decide it's time to head to the Blushing Mermaid to get to the bottom of this mystery. We head on over there and meet Captain Grizzly, who tells us that she'd never even seen Laura's daughter, who supposedly went missing here. Grizzly also alleges that when they tried to kick Laura out, she pulled out a knife and became aggressive as well. She proposes to us that she will pay us a lot of money if we can... Laura. Tavni tells her we'll do it, and we head on out to Laura's house. She's of course excited to see us, thinking we'll have updates on her daughter. Unfortunately for her, we inform her that we're here to carry out our lucrative deal that we just made with Captain Grizzly, and we do just that. We loot a bunch of her stuff too before heading back out to meet Grizzly again. This is where we find out that Grizzly was just Auntie Ethel in disguise this whole time. Ethel tells us Vandra is in her belly, brewing to become a hag, but that she needs time. She tells us if we walk away now, we'll have Ethel as an ally for the final fight. Tavni tells her it's time to die, and Ethel vanishes to go hide out in her lair. We follow her into the basement where she catches us. This fight is tough, as we need to first focus on destroying the mushrooms around since they regenerate Ethel's health. Tavni destroys one mushroom and gets the second one to very low HP. Ethel then casts Insect Plague on Tavni and Zenith, which is less than ideal, followed by creating all of her illusory copies. The copies then start to cast Rays of Sickness everywhere, and Zenith unfortunately goes down. Everyone except Kurz is looking really bad, and Tavni destroys the final mushroom left. Now we can focus on Ethel, who keeps creating more and more and more copies of herself. After a long time of all the hag's copies casting Ray of Sickness on top of another cloud of Insect Plague, it is time for Tavni to act again. She's at a measly 19 HP and does a bit of damage against Ethel and manages to break her concentration on one of the Insect Plagues. Kurz then uses a scroll of Ice Storm to reveal Ethel's whereabouts as she'd gone invisible before starting to hit her with upcast smites. This leads Ethel to throw up Vandra, and they both end up dead. I know we could have saved Vandra here, but I low-key forgot because I thought my party was toast, so I kinda overdid it. RIP, I guess. But to be honest, Tavni has just murdered Vandra's mom too, so maybe it's better to spare her the pain of finding that out. We then hurry to tell Mayrina and the other survivors that we defeated Ethel and ask them for some coin in thanks, which they give us, and then we're on our merry way. But the question is, on our merry way to where exactly? Well, to the bank, of course. We gain access to the vaults by convincing the guy at the desk that we're a security expert and make our way through. On our way in, we make sure to steal anything and everything that isn't bolted down, and eventually we find ourselves watching as some bank employees get ambushed by Minsk, who climbs out of a mimic chest. Tavni decides to do nothing but continue to watch, and a false Jahira appears as well. We know it's not her since we decided to cold-heartedly murk her at the gates of Last Light Inn. RIP. Anyway, she zaps her and Minsk out of the vaults, and we're left to fight their henchmen. We do just that, and the fight goes fine, although Glitterbeard dies in the combat. A few thousand coins and diamonds and paintings and other valuable objects richer, we then decide to go snork me before heading out to Lorokan's the next day. I've never done this bit before without Isabel and Elin at camp, so I have no idea what to expect. We march into Lorokan's tower and reveal to him we let her go free. He appears disappointed and tells us to leave, so we do. That went over a lot easier than I thought it would, to be honest. I thought he'd want to kill us or something for doing that. To celebrate Lorokan going a lot easier than I anticipated, I decide to go ahead and participate in my favorite pastime in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D in general, pickpocketing. I go to all my favorite traders and empty their pockets while they're none the wiser. It's truly a joy to me to do this, even though IRL, I've never even stolen as much as a chocolate bar. Go figure. After my stealing spree, I decide it's time to follow the trail to Minsk, and we find him in the sewers. Damn, the people in this city really aren't aware of the dangers of hantavirus, I guess, since they're so comfortable hanging out down here with the rats. We attack everyone, making sure to take out Roa before she runs away, since she's got 10k gold in her pocket that I want for myself. Sadly, I also don't care about saving Minsk, since we can't recruit him without Jahira anyway. Boo crying over Minsk's body, though, is so incredibly heartbreaking, and I can't bear it, so I leave and go loot even more stuff that's lying around. The next day, we head out to the Facemaker's boutique, where we find Dolor has paralyzed Devella and Figaro and is about to murk the latter. Tavni tells him, back off, that's my kill, and we initiate combat. Dolor goes down first, and a couple of his henchmen follow, with none of them posing any real threat to us at any point. After saving him, we speak to Figaro, who is quite literally speechless in gratitude. On Dolores' body, we find a bag of hands and also a clue as to where to go next, Candle Hallow's tombstones. Tavni sets out to look for it, but comes across some cultists who have tied Volo to a bunch of explosives instead. Yeah, sorry Volo. We set out to go look for Candle Hallows again, but realize we may need some more Terrazul, so we pop back into the guild hall. However, we get stopped by some Zentarim at the door who inform us that they're here to take over. We immediately enter combat with the guild on our side, and the Zent are toast. As thanks for fighting on their side, Ninefingers Keen and the guild are officially allied with us. Hooray to us for gaining at least one ally thus far. We then finally come across Candle Hallow's tombstones, where we go in and speak the code word Sicarius and enter through the door. We venture deeper into the dungeons and are greeted by 3 slightly strange guards with some weird names. They ask us what we can offer to enter, and Tavni offers herself, probably thinking of something else. But really, this just triggers combat. These aren't necessarily the easiest enemies to fight, but at this point our party is getting pretty powerful and we're able to take them out pretty fast. We head on in deeper into the dungeon and come face to face with Sarevok himself. We are presented with the opportunity to be judged by Baal and become one of the unholy assassins. A brief sidebar, during my first ever playthrough, I struggled a fair bit with the combat, and so I became unholy assassin here just so I didn't have to fight Sarevok and his minions and stuff. Truly insane behavior on my part. But anyway, back to the task at hand. We tell Sarevok we're ready to be judged, and he summons the spirits of those we have slain. A man appears before us, however, it isn't somebody that we killed. Nonetheless, we managed to deceive Sarevok that we murked him gleefully. Sarevok is pleased, and we follow him into the next room, where he tells us our final task is to slay Valyria in order to become an unholy assassin. Tavni says, "Sure thing," and goes pew pew and submerges herself into the pool of blood. This is so grossly unhygienic to me and grosses me out every time. But anyway, we have now officially become an unholy assassin. Good for us! Along with this new title comes a certain aura of courage and confidence, and we decide to saunter over to the Devil's Fee, where Helsik reveals that she can break people into the hells. She won't tell us more, however, which makes me mad, so I go over and pickpocket her baggie of stuff needed to open the portal to the hells. However, that's not enough, and I begin to try steal more stuff, and fail. This leads to a combat with Helsik and a bunch of hellish creatures, including some minotaurs clad in gold. These minions bring the party to half health in no time, but they're not quite strong enough to kill us before we manage to kill them. With Helsik's bag of goodies in hand, we head on upstairs and open the portal and jump in. The hells part of the game is probably my favorite bit in the entire game, so I just could not skip it this time. As we land in the hells, we're greeted by Hope herself. However, we tell her we have no time for her and continue on. However, this means that she doesn't give us the necessary disguises, and upon entering the house, we immediately run into a damned soul who realizes we're an imposter and raises the alarm. So we have to fight our entire way through. This is actually a pretty fun thing I've never experienced before, since I never choose to be a dick to Hope and always have the disguise on. After a while of fighting, Hope appears again and asks us to steal the Orphic hammer and come free her. We promise her we'll do it and carry on. We find the hammer along with some other goodies we decide to steal, and then realize we don't have a way to take the hammer. So we head back out to venture deeper into Raphael's house, where we find more hellish creatures that we must fight. We make our way to Raphael's boudoir, where we find a note with the passcode we need. We speak it to the pedestal that's holding the Orphic hammer, and the force field around it disappears. We grab it and fight our way through even more enemies before descending to Hope's prison. She's guarded by some imps and 2 spectators. We manage to quickly kill the spectators, which leaves us fighting the remaining few imps, and then we free Hope from her chains with the Orphic hammer and carry on. It is now time to go fight Raphael. This is my favorite boss fight in the entire game. I love everything about this fight. However, with the ancient Mega Pack boosts, this fight is insanely hard and none of my usual methods seem to work. Like, my level 16 paladin Kurz only has a 36% chance to hit Raphael with advantage. In no time, 2 of my party members are dead, Will left with only a few dozen HP and Kurz at half HP. I finally managed to hold Raphael and land a few big smites to get him to really low health. I think this is it until Will goes down and Raphael gets freed from Hold Monster. He heals a ton and his minions down Kurz too. I realize I really need to strategize here and begin my second attempt. I have Tavni bait out an opportunity attack from Raphael so he can't beguile her, as she is my hardest hitter right now. She lands a couple of fiend arrows on Raphael before she gets beguiled again and then gets almost downed. I have Zenith cast Hold Monster on Raphael and then Sanctuary himself, so there's a lesser chance of him breaking his concentration. Tavni unfortunately gets downed and Raphael immediately breaks out of Hold Monster. so I have Will cast it instead before running away from the crowds. Hope banishes your gear on her turn and then goes invisible. Zenith then runs into the middle of the action and casts a couple of destructive waves, which do a nice bit of AoE damage. However, Raphael once again breaks out of Hold Monster, so Will has to start sneaking back in to be able to recast it. Kurz unfortunately gets downed and Raphael is only at half health. Will and Zenith are my only hope here, and Will lands another Hold Monster on Raphael. I then have Hope use her Divine Intervention to revive our fallen companions before she goes back to being invisible. Tavni, having gotten up, is now free to go and absolutely wail on Raphael, which she does, and Raphael is finally on death's door. Kurz and Zenith take care of some of the remaining Cambions, and Will runs back in to reapply Hold Monster on Raphael. Tavni deals the killing blow, and we finally win the fight. We pick up this absolutely insane helmet for Zenith as a result of completing the quest. It's then time to say goodbye to Hope, and the best chapter of the game, and leave the Hells. The party is in need of some Snork me time after that fight, and decide to recuperate. The next day, I make a bit of a oopsie daisy as we venture out into the Steel Watch Foundry without thinking of the fact that doing this before the Iron Throne makes it so that questline automatically gets completed too. In clear terms, this means Will's dad cannot be saved and he will die in the bottom of the ocean. Oops. Anyway, we find the Gondians in the Foundry being forced and coerced by horrific means by Bane cultists, aka Gortash's people, to build and maintain Steel Watchers. We speak to Xander Tubin, who tells us the lives of the Gondians and their families are at stake, and we promise to help. For some reason though, the Gondians in the next room are hostile to me too, and I'm forced to just fight everyone in there. I don't really care though, because anyone who has ever played this fight knows that they're practically impossible to keep alive anyway, so I just do what I gotta do to get through. I did make a point to deactivate the motivators though, to give the Gondians elsewhere a chance to survive, but I'm not sure if this works. We carry on and find a few Steel Watchers and a Steel Watcher Titan in the next room. We focus first on getting rid of the normal Watchers before focusing our efforts on the big guy. With some lightning and cold damage, we end up taking it down in no time and head to the Neurocitor to destroy the Steel Watchers. We input the right code and the Foundry explodes. Outside we find Xander Tubin, who is thankful for our help, but I think killing all the Gondians earlier meant the quest for freeing them isn't exactly complete. Oh well, to make ourselves feel better, we head on out to pickpocket some more stuff, since we just burned through so many scrolls. I mean, that's what I tell myself. After having enough of our thieving activities, we head on out to find the entrance to the Iron Throne because my dumbass hadn't realized yet that that quest is now void. We go in and just find a note left behind by the guy who's normally down here. And Will is like, "Oh no, my dad." And Tavni's like, "Yeah, I totally get it, it's so hard." As if the whole reason we're in this mess isn't because of her choices. We then decide to go back to Worm's Rock, where everyone is hostile because we just destroyed the Steel Watcher Foundry. We pick off all the little enemies down here and then head on into the prison and make our way to Answer. As if Tavni needed any more reason to hate the Emperor's guts, we find out that the Emperor and Answer used to be low-key in love until the Emperor started to turn Illithid and murked Answer when he tried to offer him a merciful death. I always think it would be so cool to try recruit Answer here as an ally instead of being forced to kill him, but oh well. We get Answer to his second phase in our first turn, and after he does his Mega Mech Blast 3000 move, one Dragon Arrow from Tavni is enough to finish him. Will then has something incredibly insightful to say about all this. After whatever that was, we realized we should probably head upstairs to go get Gortash's Netherstone. We sneak up there and pick off a bit more than half of Gortash's HP during our first turn. Will then haste Kurz and Tavni, and Kurz lands a few smites on Gortash. He then goes down, and we have his minions left to take care of, but they don't pose a real threat here, and we complete the fight in no time. It is then time to go pick up Gortash's Netherstone. Once we're out of the fortress, the Elder Brain makes sure we don't lose sight of what's next on our to-do list.
Kill Orin! Kill Orin! Kill Orin! Kill Orin!
Naturally, we begin to make our way down to Baal's temple, turning ourselves invisible so we can just run past the ambush encounter. Once there, we prep our party a bit and then go through into the temple to find Orin. We remind Orin of our pact. I killed Gortash, so she should let Yenna go. She turns her sights on us and tells us she's gonna kill us now, as she is Baal's chosen. We choose to attack her, and she takes her Slayer form. This fight is quite tricky if you're not a Dark Urge, as Orin gets a ton of unstoppable charges each turn, not to mention the Baal's Edict condition. I start off by using Curse's very, very upcast magic missiles to get rid of Orin's unstoppables. She then gets real mad and starts absolutely wailing on Curse, and Zenith unfortunately fails to hold Orin. She then gets a fresh stack of unstoppable charges. Curse gets rid of these with another few magic missiles, and Tavni starts shooting monstrosity arrows at Orin. 3 of these are enough to kill her, after which we pick off the cultists. It is then time to pick up the final nether stone, and when we do so, we get a vision of where to go next. A morphic pool beneath the city where the Elder Brain is being held. After a quick long rest, we decide it's time to head into the final segment of the game. We're leaving a fair few stones unturned in the city, but it just wouldn't really make sense to go fight Cazador or the House of Grief, since we don't have Astarion or Shadowheart in this run. Without further ado, the party hops onto the little rowboat and sets off towards the morphic pool. Suddenly, the Elder Brain appears before us, and it reveals to us that destroying the Chosen Three, taking their nether stones, and bringing them here was all a part of its exact plan, the grand design. We roll a dirty 20 and thus fail to dominate the brain, and the Emperor shows up to save us. He whisks us back into the astral plane, and while we're chilling there, the brain becomes unbound and begins to take over the city. People all around start to turn into mind flayers, and those who don't become mind flayer food. In the astral prism, the Emperor tells us that we should turn into a mind flayer to be able to defeat the brain, and also demands that we give the nether stones to him so he can assimilate Orpheus and defeat the brain. We tell him we will not become a mind flayer, not in a million years, and he demands that we give him the stones again. Unfortunately for him, we have the Orphic Hammer now, so we tell him no chance, we're gonna free Orpheus ourselves. He's super unhappy with this and immediately ditches us to go join the brain side. The Emperor genuinely fucking sucks. He is a controlling, manipulative freak with absolutely zero loyalty. God, I can't wait to kill him. After the idiot Emperor leaves, we break Orpheus free and convince him to become a mind flayer for the final fight. It is then time to leave the prism and enter the upper city, where we are greeted by dragons, nautiloids, fire, and destruction. We spot the brain and start running toward its direction. We enter this hall where a flaming fist is giving an impassioned speech to a completely empty room. Well, apart from Withers and Nine Fingers Keen, who happens to be the only ally we made in this entire game. Tavni shouts out some words of encouragement to this empty room, and we cheer and then head on out. We turn invisible and run through the courtyard, soon arriving at the brainstem, which will allow us to enter the final fight. We climb up to the top of the nether brain and are greeted by tons of enemies, including the Emperor. This is genuinely maybe the hardest fight in the game for me, which I know probably sounds crazy, but I find that so many of these enemies have such powerful AoE and crowd control abilities that something always just goes wrong. But this time, things go a little better, and Tavni manages to murk the Emperor during her first turn, and I also popped the achievement for killing the dragon too. I honestly had never even bothered to attempt that before this. But anyway, after that, the biggest threat to us is the mind flayers next to the crown, so we focus on taking them down as fast as possible. After all that is done, Zenith flies up, casting a globe of invulnerability around the party along with Sanctuary on himself for a better chance at keeping his concentration on the globe. Orpheus begins channeling the portal, and we pick off the last Dream Guardian. The portal finally opens and we enter into the arena with the Nether Brain. Zenith flies closer to the brain and opens the heavenly floodgates upon it to make it wet. No, not like that. And casts a couple of chain lightnings on it, taking its HP down to 285. Curse then smites it, taking its HP down even more to 119. Then, Orpheus flies closer and blasts the brain with a massive 108 damage from a chain lightning, leaving it with only 11 HP. All in all, doing about 450 damage in our first turn to the brain with only 3 characters is not bad, and at the beginning of the next round, Tavni jumps into the arena and deals the killing blow with a regular old arrow. The brain implodes, and it's time for Tavni to make some final choices. In this moment, she chooses to betray Orpheus, dominate the brain, and to become the Absolute. And this is what happened.
You have come so far. Once you wished for nothing more than to survive. But now your dreams are far grander. By your hand alone, the future of all things shall be determined. Or so it would have been, had you not indulged too often in the power that the Illithids provided. Now the scales demand to be balanced. Ceramorphosis beckons. This is but the first conquest. Every realm shall quake at your power. Every tongue shall speak your name in awe. Every god shall perish in your shadow. This world is yours. Now for the rest.
And this, everybody, concludes our playthrough. Tavni, having made almost all the terrible choices throughout the playthrough, apart from a few odd ones here and there, decided to take over the world, become the absolute, and create a world of terror. Turning into a mind flayer at the end was the price she paid, even after having resisted it multiple times, and I guess that serves her right. I want to thank you all for watching this playthrough. I had so much fun playing it, and even more fun sharing it with you all. I'm sorry this video took way longer than anticipated to make. My life got a little bit hectic with, life responsibilities, but I'm so glad that I got to share the rest of Tavni's shenanigans with you all. I feel like this ending was super consistent with the luck that we had throughout this, with rolling and the dialogues. And in the end, we got a very reliable idea of who Tavni really is. I have a few ideas for future videos, but if there's something you would like to see from me next, please let me know down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this series, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me to continue to make more silly content like this in the future. Thank you again so much for coming along on this randomized Baldur's Gate 3 journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next video. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye!
In my name.